Hello, science fans! Today we are going to explore a super cool tool that helps us see the invisible world of electricity. It's called a multimeter. Now, what is a multimeter? Think of it as a detective for electricity. It's a small, handheld device that can measure different electrical properties. The multi part of its name means many, and the meter part means to measure. So, a multimeter is a many measurer. It combines several measurement tools like a voltmeter, an ammeter, and an ohmmeter, all into one handy gadget. It's an essential tool for anyone who works with electronics, from scientists and engineers to hobbyists and students like you. So, what can this wonderful device actually measure? Its main jobs are to measure three fundamental things: voltage, current, and resistance. Voltage is like the pressure or push that makes electricity flow through a wire, similar to how water pressure pushes water through a pipe. Current is the amount of electricity that is actually flowing, like how much water is moving through that pipe. Resistance is what tries to slow down the flow of electricity, like a narrow spot in the pipe that makes it harder for water to get through. By measuring these three things, a multimeter gives us a window into how an electrical circuit is behaving, which is incredibly useful. You might be wondering where you would even use such a tool. Well, the applications are all around you. At home, you could use a multimeter to check if the batteries in your remote control are still good or if they need to be replaced. You could test the wall outlets to make sure they are providing the correct voltage. You could even use it to figure out why your favorite toy stopped working, perhaps by finding a broken wire. It's a fantastic tool for troubleshooting and understanding the electronic devices that we use every single day. It helps us answer the question, is the electricity flowing correctly? In a school science lab, a multimeter is an absolute superstar. When you build your first simple circuit with a battery, wires, and a light bulb, a multimeter can help you see the science in action. You can measure the voltage of the battery to see how much push it has. You can measure the current flowing through the circuit to see how much electricity is making the bulb light up. You can even measure the resistance of different components to see how they affect the circuit. Using a multimeter turns abstract concepts from your science textbook into real, measurable numbers that you can see and understand. It makes learning about electricity hands-on and a lot more fun. Before we start measuring, let's get familiar with the main parts of a typical digital multimeter. The first thing you'll probably notice is the large screen at the top. This is the display, and it's where the magic happens. The display shows you the measurement reading as a number, making it very easy to read. It will also show you the unit of measurement, like V for volts, A for amps, which is short for amperes, the unit of current, or omega for ohms, the unit of resistance. Some displays even have a backlight so you can see the numbers clearly, even in a dimly lit room. It's the face of the multimeter, telling you everything you need to know. Next, you'll see two wires with pointy metal tips. These are called the probes. They are your connection to the electrical circuit you want to test. Usually you will have one black probe and one red probe. The black probe is typically the common or negative probe, and it plugs into the port on the multimeter labeled COM. The red probe is the positive probe, and you plug it into the port labeled for the measurement you want to take, like VOMA. These probes act like the multimeter's hands, allowing you to safely touch different points in a circuit to take a reading. Always make sure they are plugged in securely before you start. The big knob in the middle of the multimeter is the dial, or rotary switch. This is how you tell the multimeter what you want to measure. You turn the dial to select the function and the range. For example, to measure voltage, you'll turn the dial to the section marked with a V. This section might have different settings like 20V or 200V. You should always choose a range that is higher than the voltage you expect to measure. Think of it like choosing the right measuring cup. You wouldn't use a tiny cup to measure a large amount of water. The dial is the control center of your multimeter. Finally, look at the bottom of the multimeter. You'll see several holes or jacks. These are the ports where you plug in your probes. The COM port, which stands for common, is almost always where the black probe goes. It's the reference point for all measurements. The other ports are for the red probe. You'll see one labeled with V, omega, and maybe MA for small currents. This is your main port for most measurements. There might be a separate port labeled 10A or 20A, specifically for measuring larger currents. Plugging the probes into the correct ports is a critical first step for getting an accurate and safe measurement. All right, let's measure some voltage. Voltage is the electrical pressure in a circuit. First, plug your black probe into the COM port and your red probe into the V port. Next, turn the dial to the DC voltage setting, which is usually marked with a V and a solid line or a dashed line, V with a straight or dashed line underneath. If you're measuring a battery, like a 9-volt battery, you would set the range to 20V because 20 is the next number higher than 9. Now carefully touch the red probe to the positive terminal of the battery and the black probe to the negative terminal. Look at the display. It should show you a number very close to 9 volts. That's how you measure voltage. Now let's try measuring resistance. Resistance tells us how much a component resists the flow of electricity. First, make sure the component you are testing, like a resistor or a light bulb filament, is not connected to any power source. This is very important. You can damage your meter if you try to measure resistance in a powered circuit. Plug your probes into the same ports, black in COM and red in VO. Turn the dial to the resistance section, marked with the Greek letter omega. Touch the probes to each end of the component. The meter will send a tiny current through it and measure how much it's resisted, displaying the value in ohms on the screen. Measuring current is a little different and requires more care. Current is the flow of electrons, so you have to make the multimeter part of the circuit itself. This is called measuring in series. First, turn off the power to your circuit. Break the circuit open by disconnecting a wire. Now, set your multimeter to measure current by turning the dial to the A section. Make sure your red probe is in the correct current port, MA for small currents or 10A for large ones. Connect the probes into the break you made, so the electricity has to flow through the multimeter to complete the circuit. Now turn the power back on and read the current on the display. Let's think about a real-world example. Imagine your string of holiday lights has gone out. You can use your multimeter to be a detective. First, you can test the wall outlet for voltage to make sure it's working. Then, you can unplug the lights and test each bulb for continuity, which is a type of resistance test. The continuity setting on a multimeter usually beeps if there is a complete path for electricity. You can touch the probes to the 2 wires on the bottom of each bulb. If the multimeter beeps, the bulb is good. If it's silent, you've found the broken bulb that's causing the whole string to go dark. See? Science is useful. Using a multimeter is fun and educational, but safety is the most important part of any experiment. The #1 rule is to never touch the metal tips of the probes with your bare hands when they are connected to a circuit. The plastic handles are there for a reason, to insulate you and keep you safe from electrical shock. Always hold the probes by their insulated handles. Also, before you connect your multimeter to anything, do a quick visual check of the probes and their wires. If you see any cracks, exposed metal, or damage, do not use them. Get a new set of probes. Safety is your top priority. When you are setting up your multimeter, always think before you measure. Double-check that you have the dial set to the correct measurement type and range before you connect the probes to the circuit. For example, trying to measure voltage when your meter is set to measure current can blow a fuse inside your multimeter or even damage it permanently. A good habit is to set the range to the highest setting first if you are unsure of the value you are measuring. You can always dial it down to a lower range for a more precise reading after you get an initial measurement. Think, set, then connect. Another critical safety tip involves high voltage circuits, like the electrical outlets in your home. These circuits can be very dangerous, and you should only test them with extreme caution. And if you're a student, with the supervision of a knowledgeable adult. When measuring high voltage, keep your fingers well behind the finger guards on the probes. It's also a good practice to use the one-hand rule where possible, keeping one hand in your pocket. This prevents electricity from accidentally creating a path across your chest and through your heart, which is the most dangerous kind of electrical shock. In conclusion, learning to use a multimeter is like gaining a superpower. It gives you the ability to see and understand the invisible force of electricity that powers so much of our world. From checking batteries and fixing electronics to building amazing science projects, the skills you learn by using a multimeter are incredibly valuable. It empowers you to stop guessing and start measuring, turning you from a passive user of technology into an active investigator. So get a multimeter, practice on some simple circuits, and always remember to be safe. Consider the possibilities. The world of electronics is now yours to explore. Go for it.